we're called a person. Now, have you heard of the term an individual? A rugged individual? The wild West American man who doesn't need anybody? I think that's a definition of hell, because Father, Son and Spirit are a community at the beginning. They're in each other, they love each other, know each other. If you don't know love or need love, you're alone. That's going back to the problem we had at the first lecture. So, a person exists in a network of relationships as part of a community. Now, if I have a candle and hold up a candle and the light goes out from that candle forever and just keeps going out into space, we know that light never stops and it never gets a reflection back, does that candle ever know itself? No. We are only known as we engage with and reflect with others. Right? The nature of that engagement can be pretty horrible. We can be horrible to each other, or we can be loving to each other. Right? So the early church often used the idea of a candle or light. And on its own, a candle that's alone is not a person. Persons exist in families, connections, relationships, community. Now, in the Western world, we had this hang-on from Neoplatonism. We went through Neoplatonism in the Christian fish and Greek soup talk. Now, there was a guy called Boethius who, 1,000 years ago, post Aquinas, he defined a person as individual substance. Individual substance, I'm an individual of rational nature. My mind, me. But where have you gone? And where's community gone? It's all gone. So we understand a person exists in relationships, networks and forms of community, which is, for us, coming from the picture of the Father and the Son and the Spirit, and they're one. Now what we're going to do is just have a little talk about a person. So Phil, can you just come up here? Now maybe stand here, Phil. Okay, you just stand there like that. Now just look at me. Now I want you to tell me when I'm getting too close to when you can feel I'm in your space. About there, is that right?
No, I can take more.
No, yeah, you could. Okay, but when am I in your space?
In my space.
When am I when you can feel me in your presence? About here, yeah. So Phil's personal space is at about 2 meters. He goes through life and he can feel people in this space. Now, when you come in close, Phil is going to get a little bit uncomfortable, right? Okay, but when I get to about here, I'm outside your space and he's got space to be. So we've all got this thing of our own person, and we've got this space around us which is really the space we live in. Now what we're dealing with here is intriguing for me because I love physics, so it's a field. The next thing that's intriguing to me is that this field stops. The only field I know in physics that stops is the strong nuclear force in the nucleus. All the other fields go out forever. So it's intriguing that you can work out this thing and you can go, I can feel it right there. Boom, he can feel it. So it's got this line, and I'm outside of him now, and I'm inside of his space now.
Kind of feel it here somewhere.
Yeah, how does that work? Now, we all know this intuitively. You know when someone's in your space or outside your space, and we don't know how that works. Just step outside his space so he's a bit more comfortable. Now, as that goes on, this has other ramifications, and I want you to take it on board because it becomes important when people have been through abuse. Right? So if I've been through abuse and I'm a little child, what I will do is try and push out to stop what's happening to me, but because I'm sort of powerless, I'll push out my boundaries And in my work with abused people, I've had to sometimes place the person on one end of the car park and keep walking and get to about 40 metres, and they go, yeah, you're outside my space now. Now, just ask yourself a question. How's that person inside a jumbo jet flying across the Atlantic?
Very, very good.
People all in this space, all confined, stuck like a sardine tin. How are they walking through a mall or a major shopping centre? People all over them. So to get to know yourself and the understanding of relationship, we've got this thing of our own space. So that's just something to put on the shelf and consider as we go through, and we'll build from there. So that's the person over here. And you can sit down now, it's all good. And so what we were doing was showing that when I got close to Phil, he could feel it. Couldn't you, Phil?
Yeah.
Right? And this is common to everybody. But the intriguing thing for me is the maths of the field, because fields that have a limit are fascinating because that's like a force field. You know, it's intriguing mathematics that fields can stop. Anyway, so when you get to meet somebody and when you engage this space and you feel comfortable in this space, and then when you can become sharing their core, that's an intoxicating feeling. That's intimacy. It's beautiful. That's what Father, Son and Spirit live in. The Father is in the Son is in the Father's in the Spirit's in the Father. The Spirit and the Son are in each other, and yet they're still distinct. So they're fully distinct and fully in union. So the path down here probably requires some things, doesn't it? It probably requires virtues to do things nicely to each other. If I'm coming down here and I suddenly become captain abusive, and I become horrible, do you think that's going to progress to intimacy? No. But are we meant to progress to intimacy? Maybe God doesn't want that. The love with which you love me will be in them. So with Jesus penetrating through into the creation, sideways going through each of us is the love with which the Father loved the Son, and yes, it will form community. Oh my goodness. But Bruce, yes, well Bruce, I've got all this horrendous little behaviour running in me. And if I'm a person like that with all this horrendous behaviour running on the inside of me, what's that going to do in going down to become one with somebody? Had the phone call this morning, didn't we? Good, bad shuts off our relational life. Both people shut off. I want to assess you, you're good or bad or right or wrong, and they're assessing you, you're good, bad, right, wrong, and any understanding of emotions, needs, values, experience, and in fact, intimacy is gone. So when in the Garden of Eden it says, the day you eat of this tree you'll die, and the tree of morality is called the tree of death, and Jesus is called the tree of life, the tree of morality, good, bad, is the tree of death. It's death to your relationships because you can never fully come down and know intimacy. Does that make sense? It's not very complicated, is it? Now, this gentleman today was in pain, and this wife today was in pain, and they're accusing each other. And one partner was accusing the other of, you've had the affairs, and the other one said, yeah, I've had the affairs because of you. There's no self-responsibility. There's no forgiveness. There's accusation. Now, when you're running your internal mess, right, and you've got the accuser accusing everything that's going on, a really good way to stay locked there and not get out of it is to maintain a lack of self-responsibility. So a really good way to pour super glue into the lock so it can't move, a really good way to mess it up properly is to have no responsibility. And yet, when you come back to the Father and the Son and the Spirit, does the Father love the Son? Yes. Does the Son love the Father? Yes. Are they responsible for themselves? Yes. Are they responsible to each other? Yes. Are they responsible for themselves? For me, and 2 for you. But when we get tangled as humans with our personhood process, we don't do that. We make you responsible for me at all sorts of levels, and the moment I've done that, I've handed away the keys by which anything might work sensibly. So we're going to come through some of these little personhood things first, and we'll just start looking at these. And what we can have is disordering of responsibilities. So, if I'm a person, I'm fully free and fully responsible for my emotions, my actions and thoughts, and I'm responsible to you, not for you. When we were driving here today, Zoe said something. What did you say, Zoe? I something you? About my driving? What did you say? Not scare you, but you used the word. Anyway, freak me. Yeah, you freak me, Daddy. Yeah, and I said, darling, I'm a stimulus for you. I can't freak you. Freaking, you feel. I said, better language is you feel freaked by my behaviour, but I can't freak you. The moment you hand away your emotions to someone else, you begin to lose yourself. Your emotions are yours and they're sacred. You are sacred, and what you feel is sacred. I can be a stimulus to you, like I've just been a stimulus to Zoe, and I was giggling when she said it. It was so good. So I can be a stimulus to you, right? But I'm a stimulus, but then you have your emotions, right? Now, I can't cause those emotions. If you have a kid who grew up with a high-speed rally driver, they drive with me and go, no, you just drive normally, right? You have a kid who grows up with a granny, they're the opposite, right? So the stimulus can be the same. The emotions felt belong to the person. You with me? And that's the same for every part of our life. This doesn't give us grounds to behave badly with people because we are responsible to them, to love them, but we're not responsible for your emotions. Now, I can be a stimulus, but I'm not the source of your emotions. And we can be a very nasty stimuli to each other too. We can be horrible to each other, and sometimes intentionally. Now, when you move into this thing, this is the, is it the Kaplan abuse diagram? And it's a very good thing because it's a non-personhood definition. When we want to hurt people, we say, I'm not responsible for hurting you, right? I'm not responsible, you made me do it. If you hadn't done that, I wouldn't have done that to you. I'm not responsible for what I do. The rescuer says, oh, you poor thing, both you're not responsible for what you've done and you're not responsible for being a victim. The victim says, I'm not responsible for anything. I can't fix anything. I'm not responsible for my life. Now we all run around those to some level. But at some level we have to come to the point where I'm responsible for my life. I'm responsible for what I think. I'm responsible for what I feel. I'm responsible for what I do. And I'm responsible to you and not for you. So in the chat with the person on the phone today, they were saying, I don't know that I can forgive my spouse, my partner. Don't know if I want to. Well, what do you want to do? What do they want? Where are you going with it? And personhood, and these are very sort of slow introductions, personhood, if you're doing it, is laced with self-responsibility. And while I'm laced with self-responsibility, I'm not required to fix myself. We come back and hold in us what we said before, that Jesus is in you, the love of the Father is in you, and they give you what you don't have. So you say, well, what's the link between my self-responsibility and them here? Our line there is asking for help. Holy Spirit, please take what Jesus has and share it with me here, because I haven't got it. I don't have the capacity to do what's required, A, B, C, D. I don't have any capacity there. I'll take responsibility I can, and I can do that because A, you love me, you hold me, I'm included, you've accepted me, so the accusing's gone. I can start there, but I don't have the strength in myself, and you don't have to. Remember Jesus' first command we went through yesterday was, let me love you. His command isn't get your stuff ready for God. His command isn't clean yourself up. His command isn't be good or do this. He says, no, let me love you. That the love with which Dad loves us might be in us and might flow. Now, if that's flowing, things start sorting out. So we do have choice. And we can have agreements with darkness all the way through where we don't want to change, don't want it. We don't have to have the strength to change. We just have to choose. Holy Spirit, I don't want to be involved in whatever that is anymore. I ask, please, that you sort that out and bring me what Jesus has for that. And this is our internal walk, and we keep growing that way. But when I become a Christian, isn't everything meant to be just all fixed? Yeah, but then where's personhood? Bruce, you are who you are because you've done what you've done, and I'll meet you there and we'll walk out together. But can't you just, erase that whole thing and, yeah, but what happens to you as a being? What happens to who you are? Well, what do you mean? I actually want who you are. I want your person. But for my internal accusing and sense of morality, it'd be much better if you just erased it. Yeah, but why are you scared of going down here, Bruce? Why are you scared of facing yourself? I just am. Well, I think you're scared because A, you've got accusing going on, right? And B, you don't realise that if you drop through your black hole, you'll meet me. You don't realise that I've come to tabernacle in your flesh and I'm at the very, very, very bottom. And if you drop through, you'll meet me. But I don't want to go near that. That's okay, we'll get you there. So how can I walk with Jesus on the inside if I'm not going to be self-responsible? Because the whole time it's your fault. If you hadn't done that, Trevor, I wouldn't have done this. And Ryan, if you hadn't done that, I would have, and Jim, if you hadn't sorted that out, and Wes, if you hadn't, we can accuse, and devolve responsibility out of ourselves.
I mean, it started in the garden, right, Bruce? Lord, the woman you gave me.
Yeah, Lord, the woman you gave me. Yeah, exactly. The woman you gave me, even though I've been working with her, on her with Satan for all this time to get her to actually eat the fruit. So I've lied about it even in that situation. Self-deception. Now, So what happens when Dad comes to you and says, Bruce, I love you? Oh, it's okay. Bruce, I forgive you. A bit better. Bruce, I'm in you and holding you. I can't believe it. Bruce, I'm underneath all your mess. And even though you can't face yourself, and even though there's areas you don't want to go in, I'm actually taking up my residence there. I'll sit here and I'll look at those part of myself, you know. We just don't want to go near that. And then we discover, as this continues, as the presence of person of Christ is in you, your judge begins to drop. Right? And we will detail, we're moving into an overview of how we heal now. And we'll do that. How much time have we got?
Maybe 3 to 5.
3 to 5? We'll just stop with the judge then. So we move into the judge. The judge says we are guilty. Forgiveness shuts down guilt. When guilt drops, fear starts to drop. When fear starts to drop, we might even move to love. Now, inside our brain, and we'll talk more about this in detail, we've introduced it in the earlier lectures, you have a switch between love and fear in your brain. Your amygdala, there's one on each side, about there and there and about there and there. The nuclei that screen nearly all your coming inputs. And it screens it for content, and so you know what's being said and the environment of it. And it screens it for love or fear, threat or acceptance. When you've got an internal accuser going on, how much is your capacity to receive external information? Right down. When you've got your accuser running, what's your capacity for even engaging with your partner? Everything becomes a moral interaction, a little in the way of meeting of emotional being. So as you hear the gospel, there's a lady sitting just over there yesterday, she was just bawling her eyes out as she heard the gospel. And apparently today she's still crying. In a good way. Well, you know, because when you hear the gospel, all the stuff you've got locked and held can start coming out. And so the switch can come over to love. Love involves not being alone. Love involves relating. So the love with which the Father loved the Son, this goes sideways into the human race, right? Now, the judge is undone. Guilt is removed. And the amygdala switch can move. Wow, that's really nice, isn't it? And then, what can happen then? Undoing the freeze response releases body, mental, and emotional processing. That's this is so simple. And this is only the early steps of what Jesus does to us as we go, I don't have to be guilty. This thing starts losing power. If that thing loses power, do I need my defences? If that thing loses power, do I need to split myself into good and bad? And by the way, you lot are still good and bad. But at least on myself I'll go easy, right? But even then it comes out where I won't judge you. Right? So as that loses power and is accusing me, what happens to me having to put all my bits away? It starts dropping. It starts dropping. Okay. So, the judge is shut down. Guilt is removed. The padlock of guilt on fear is undone. The amygdala switch can move to love. The freeze response is unremoved, which frees body, emotional, and mental processing. Now that means all the traumas I've got half processed, and of course I don't have any traumas half processed, it's just maybe you lot that have got traumas half processed because I'm pure, perfect, and whole. And I never lie. No, we're all riddled with traumas, right? We're all carrying grief, so all carrying mess. And as you receive love, your body and your emotions and your brain can process trauma, and it can flow and pass through, and you can start sorting it. So you can start living. It's just step one. Okay? That's enough for that session.